So this is a tutorial for how to use the RazManager client. Maybe you've seen some of the other presentations and you get interested to try it out yourself. This is then how to do this. You will need to start to go into the GitHub page for RazManager. Go to github.com, in some search bar somewhere, search for RazManager. You probably end up with a page similar to this, where you can select some of the so-called repositories that I have published. RazManager is actually a user, and within that user there is a repository called RazManager. So this is where you find my other work, but if you go into RazManager, you see the RazManager page. So this may be a little bit confusing, but it's actually RazManager/RazManager to get to the client. And here are some small installation instructions. But before we go into these, this is an early version, so it contains a lot of errors and bugs and everything. So one way to find what those are is to go into the issues page here, where I'm at least started to gather different errors that I know about. I need to address a lot more things, but it's at least a start. So going back there to the RazManager main page, we see some instructions here and what you need to be able to do this. If you demonstrate this on Windows, but if we, for example, go into Linux, which we have here, we can see that, well, it can be downloaded from an app store. If we right click on this one here, we can see that RazManager can now be stored on a Linux device. And here are some information and some instructions. For example, if you want to do this on a Raspberry Pi, yeah, there are some instructions on how to do this. And once you've done that, the client will automatically update itself when I publish new versions. This is not, however, how it works for the other operating system versions, for example, for Windows and Mac OS and Android. They will eventually, of course, be available from an app store, but they're not right now, so they need to be installed manually, and it's a little bit cumbersome, but it is what it is right now. So let's try to work with that. There are some detailed instructions here, for example, for Windows, but you mainly then need to go into the releases page. Where that appears depends a little bit on your layout, but it might be underneath here or it might be to the right side. Go to releases and then select the latest and greatest versions at the time. You then expand the assets drop down and then select the version. In this case, then we'll try Windows, so we'll try that one. Download, click on that zip file, and it starts to download. And we can then go to either open up, or better actually go to Explorer and find that into, this is Swedish version, but you think you get it, download the files, and then this is important, to extract the file. Extract everything in the file, and then we should somewhere here have that. Oh, okay, sorry. This is the page that appears, and then you say extract, and then you can go into the extracted folder, and there you will find the RazManager executable, and then you start that. Then you're on. You need to bypass some security things because you downloaded unknown software, and you say expand that and run it anyway. And then RazManager starts, and now I'm previously logged in here as an organizer, so I see a little bit more than you do when you start this, because I logged in with my own RazManager account here. To the left here we see events that you can view, and I see a little bit more events than you can right now. But to the right here we're seeing things which you work with as a race organizer when you want to manage a race. For example, if I go inside here, I can see a lot more things here in the menu than you can do. This is what I work with if I set up races here to see. So, but if I go back there and sign out, you will not see any of those. You can create an account, sign up for an account, but it's not really necessary at this point because I'm not logged in right now, and you can see those races anyway. When you go to a regular event, you will probably sign up in advance, and then you get a code from the race organizer, and it will give you certain permissions then when you attend the race, as well as afterwards. But you can do that afterwards as well, and you can view that even if you haven't logged in. So it's no need really for create an account at this point in time. So let's, for example, look at this event here. And we can see that we have 2 races there, and I think that it's this one here, the first one here, that is currently running. We click on that heat, and then we get into a race that we are, let's say, replaying live. This is a race in November, a GT3 Inter-Series race, and we can see that we have 16 drivers in the race, and it's currently going on here. The leaderboard here is adjusted to try to get all the drivers on the page, so we'll adjust the font size automatically to that, and it means that maybe that we have some empty space here because we don't have any more columns to show. We could do that, but it would just be a little bit too much information, I think. There are some ways to customize this. We'll get into that a little bit later. One thing though you would do if you follow a race like this, you maybe want to do that if you do follow a live race, you want to do that as someone that is part of team or whatever, a driver. And so as we right now are not signed in, the client doesn't know who you are. So let's look a little bit what happens when you haven't sort of followed anyone. We can, for example, go to heat analysis, and this is a little bit same for everyone, the position charts. But if we look at lap times, well, it would display the lap times for everyone in the race at that point in time. And it's a little bit too much. You can select the different drivers here, you can do that, but it's not really what you want. You probably instead want to go inside here, go into settings, and then because you're not really signed in here, the program cannot select the team for you automatically. It would have done that if you were signed in. So you need to help the program a little bit here by selecting who you want to follow, and say that you want to follow PT Motorsports for whatever reason. And you select that one and you go back, and then when you work with that, well, that team that you selected will be automatically selected in some of the views, and it's much easier to work with this then. You can see that the race here is updating this charts live. We'll get to this a little bit later, but I can zoom in here and maybe then try to look at the latest lap times instead, and we can see now that the chart updates live. It's a little bit tricky thing here when you're doing this because it doesn't snap good right now to the y-axis here. I can view this a little bit here, try to get it to work with good separation here, but this needs to work a little bit better later on. I'll work on it. But now when we are looking at this team here, PDM, then maybe we want to hear the sound of those with that team. So let's go into settings here, and because I've selected PT Motorsports here, I can now enable sound. That will not be possible otherwise. You need to select the team before you can be able to do this. So let's do this then, and we have some...
You are 11 seconds behind DTM Les Foes.
We have some settings here which are maybe sensible for a race. And you don't want
average
to hear
lap time 13.39.
every lap time, but you might want to hear every average lap time or every third lap, or if you are behind someone, you want to hear that maybe now and then. You can also then switch
You
your
are
voice.
1 lap behind DTM Les Foes.
Yep. So you can select another voice here. For example, if you are running this on a non-English version of Windows or whatever operating
Average
system
lap time
you're running,
15.26.
you can select, for example, a Swedish voice. Then I can do that because I'm running a Swedish version of Windows. And it will change the voice then.
You are 1 lap behind DTM Les Foes.
But you can also then hear that, well, it pronounces the English version with a Swedish pronunciation. But if you were to run, for example, things with only a lap time,
19,77.
you will hear those lap times announced in your own local language. So try that out, for example, with a Dutch language or wherever. Probably work a little bit better. So, but
13,27.
but let's turn off the sound. It gets a little bit annoying after sometimes, maybe. You can adjust the settings here. If we then go back and look at the leaderboard, there's some settings that you can adjust there as well. Let's look at the driver board. Yeah, on a big screen like this, maybe this is what you want to do, maybe not on a personal device. So maybe you want to do this in a race organization. Maybe you don't want to do that as a driver attending a team. So let's work a little bit with the settings here. We can go to, there are some minimal settings here on the leaderboard. There will be need to be much more of those. But if you go to the driver board, we can see that, okay, maybe we only want to show the first half of the drivers for whatever reason. And it looks like this instead then in a 16 drivers event. Maybe you want to be a little bit more focused and only show your own team. For example, then let's pick, what would you have? Let's pick PT Motorsport. And then we go back, and then we only seeing that one here. It will maybe a little bit too big for this screen, but pretend now that you are doing this on a smaller device, for example, an Android phone or whatever, and it will look a little bit more like this instead. So to be able to view this on a device with a smaller screen, you typically need to go into the driver board and select only some of the teams, only one team that you're interested to follow yourself. And you can adjust the settings, but this is probably what you want to have a look at your own device. You will see the main information here, and you will also then see the latest lap times updating here as well in a graph. You will also then see, and this is a little bit what I'm be interested in looking feedback for, you will see the gap to the nearest drivers, and it will update and will show you how close they are, and but only view those things that are closer to you in the race. And we sort of try to scale this a little bit up and down when you get closer or you get further away from someone else. So this is a little bit how you install the Windows client, but let's look into how you work with this from the other operating systems as well. Let's try some more clients. Back on the GitHub page, we can see that we also then have some instructions for example, how to get this to work on an Android device. A little bit tricky, but if you follow the instructions, I think you would manage. We are now on a Mac, so I thought we'll be demoing this on a Mac as well. It's a little bit more tricky because so many security warnings when you download this and install this manually. So let's walk through that. So now I'm on the Mac. I'm going to the releases page and pick the latest and greatest one, and then shows to download the version for macOS. And there we have that, and then we can start that one, and it will, this is Swedish then, but it will warn that you cannot open the file, and you should not then press OK here, because it will make the sort of pop-up here disappear. You should instead click on the question mark here instead. Clicking on the question mark will bring up this display here, and there's a link there saying, okay, go to integrity and security. So do that, and this one here pops up. Then when this is done, you can click finished here. So now if you scroll down, you will get a message here saying, okay, RazManager was blocked to protect your computer. Open anyway. Yeah, let's do that. And if you want to move it to the bin, no, open up anyway. And then you need to enter your password. And then finally you're there. So this is how you can start RazManager. And it will now be, when you start again, it will be in your download folder, and you can start it from there again without the security warnings. Let's work with this then a little bit more. So let's pick this time the different races from the Suzuki Double Digital event here in January. So we can then look into, for example, begin with the Group C race, and we select then the only heat there, the race itself, and we can see here, we'll see a little bit more now on screen because we have even the drivers here as well, and this is a little bit random, so of course it maybe it's the driver for every team here that actually were in the real race here. Maybe we get better data for the next race. But this is all the final standings, and we can see that the team DSCA came second, a lap behind international races. But let's try then to view this race from their perspective. So easiest way then to do that and get right to false is to click on settings and select that we want to follow that team. So it will, if we then go to heat analysis, takes a little bit of time to read in all the data. It goes a little bit quick on this Mac, probably goes a little slow on yours computer, and we'll need to work with that a little bit more. But we can see that the below line here, which is international racers, came first, and the greenish line here, DSCA, came second here, but we cannot really see in this position chart here how close the race really was. So let's look at the gaps instead. So this is the gaps from DCSA's perspective. They are selected here because I chose to follow them. Otherwise you need to select that manually. But let's exclude some of the other teams and then look more specifically on, where do we have, there we have them. So now we are comparing, the green line here is the DSCA team, and this is the gap throughout the race through international races. So we can see, well, in the beginning of race here, they got a little bit more behind, then it's sort of 2 minutes behind for major part of the race, and here at the last portion of the race here, DSCA were catching up here, and almost got ahead here if an international race hasn't picked up the pace. So let's look a little bit more in this in detail for the last hour of the race. Zooming in like this, and we can see at the end here we're only 13 seconds something that differed. And we can see a little more in detail if this pace would continue here, maybe then DSCA would get ahead. So we can see a drop here in the gap, meaning that DSCA got closer. But let's study the lap times to understand a little bit more what happened here. So this is the lap times for the race for DSCA. We have them pre-selected. Let's bring in international races as well. And then look at this from that part of the race, the last half an hour or so. And we can see then that while it actually, they were a little bit quicker, the SCA, than the blue team international racers when you compare the lap times, but not much really. The sort of the difference that explained the gaps is more because we had a few, they had a few more offs here for international racers, and we can see also then that we have a driver change here, and the lap times didn't really change then, sort of the same as it were before, but there are a little bit fewer offs, the slots in that section of the race compared to earlier here, and that is what really made that sort of difference there. So how do I know that there was a driver change there? Well, if we look at stint analysis, not actually from the SCA's perspective, because you can see this is a little bit random data with random driver assignments. But if we look at international racers, that information is a little bit more up to date. And we can see here that, well, we did a driver change here at that last part of the race here where we have a little bit fewer slots. And the pace wasn't really worth anything, just we had a number of fewer slots when we changed from Geo to Jone. One other way of looking at the driver percentage of this is to look at the driver percentages. This is how the drivers, the portion of the laps and durations, almost the same, can be a little bit different. And we can see that, well, Jone drove a little bit more of the part of the race than the other drivers. Okay, so and we can also then see if we want to compare the different lap times here for the different stints for the different drivers. Let's exclude some of the previous stints. Let's only look at the last two here. Yeah, we can see that maybe the lap times average are pretty the same, but we have a few more offs there. And this sort of missing lap time here is because we have a pit time, because those pit in and pit out times are not part of the lap times during the stints. And okay, that was, I think, interesting. Let's look at the other race at that event, the VWEC race. And we can see here that we had a pretty interesting race. We had HMB came in second, and international races came in third, but there were only a very small gap between them. So let's look at this then from HMB's perspective. And let's look at heat analysis, and we can see the data then is being read in, and we can see then when everything here gets loaded that while we have HMB in second position, then they were third, and then the last moments of the race they actually came second. So let's look at the gaps. Let's exclude some of the other teams here, And then we are viewing this from HMB's perspective. This is a sort of cyan type, cyan colored line here. We can see that, well, international races, which we're comparing to, they increased the gap throughout the race, a little bit stable here in the middle, then something happened to them. What actually happened is that they dropped the antenna. They know that they had dropped the antenna and they needed to repair it, and therefore they dropped a lot of time, of course. They drove a little more, then picked up the pace. I think they did a driver change there, and then let's look in what happened here in the last part of the race. If we look a bit closer, if I manage to zoom in, that can sometimes be a little bit tricky. But we can see that, yeah, this pace here gap were decreasing. Sure it was, but it was a pretty major drop here. And this is when then HMB passed international races, and they tried to keep up, but couldn't really. So let's look again at the lap times here around that mark. And we bring in international races again, and we need to zoom in maybe a few times here before we get to that last part of the race here. And we can see that before this driver change, HMB were doing a little bit better lap times, but not that much really. And after the driver change, well, internationally swapped a little bit. International drivers were doing a little bit better lap times compared to HMB. But at the end, it only differed a few seconds here. So if you look at the tactics for this race here, maybe they picked up a little bit better pace here. International races, they did. And HMB were doing steady times. But if that driver change never would taken place, I think that the sort of time that they lost here would actually, it's more than those 10 seconds or 10, 12 seconds. So and you need to change the driver and you need to pick up the pace and so on. And if you actually didn't have done that driver change, maybe then international races would have come in second. One thing that we discussed at the event and afterwards as well was that transparency is important and at such an event. For example, who reported a penalty and did that get accepted or not by race control? You want to see that, not during the race, but you also want to see it afterwards when you get home a few weeks later. And it same goes a little bit with driver assignments as well. Should you enforce a certain percentage or not? I, for example, may be of the opinion that one driver should only be able to belong to one team, not only because there's a lot of functionality inside RazManager that sort of assumes that, but also because it's more like real racing. So it becomes important to keep track of the driver assignments as well. And currently that is a bit tricky because I only have access to, let's say, all the information I've had from this event was the chronolog files themselves, and those driver assignments are not part of that log file, of course. So what I've done then is that I taking certain lap times and assigning, if they are long enough, maybe more than 20 seconds, create a new so-called stint for that then, and assign a driver randomly to that. So that would not look correct. For example, now we are back in that Group C race and we're looking at DSCA, and of course we didn't have stints looking like this. But now I've also then logged in. I didn't have that, I didn't do that before. So now you can see a little bit edit symbol here, and you can see add a stint symbol as well. So if you log in, currently you can do that, just create an account, log in, and you will actually get access to that. So this is not how it should of course be in the future. Currently anyone can edit anyone's stints, and that need to be of course different, but this is how it is right now. But if I then want to edit that stint, I can then click on the bottom here, and maybe it wasn't Quinten, was someone answer. Christoph, we haven't had that person in that race before. Maybe that lap wasn't correct for a reason. Maybe it was 110 instead. And I can also maybe add some comments. For example, tire change or whatever. And save that. And then that gets updated, and you can also see that directly reflected in here, and you can also see that directly reflected in the driver percentages as well. Of course, if you want to use this, maybe then a good way of using stints is also when you want to compare during practice what you did, and you want to maybe add some comments there. They should maybe then only be visible to a member of that team, not to anyone, because you want to, whatever changes you do and want to make comments on, you don't want that to view that for someone else. That needs to go there. But when you've done that, you can, for example, during practice as well, not only a race, maybe compare the different stints and understand, okay, we did the change to the car, that made it better, that made it worse, or whatever. So this then concludes the walkthrough slash how to work with the RazManager client. So download it, install it, and have fun with it.